You're listening to E-Commerce Fastlane, episode 15.
Welcome to E-Commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, launch, grow, and scale a wildly successful e-commerce company. Listen to real conversations with proven practical strategies and success stories. Learn how to generate more traffic, more sales, more profit, and customer lifetime value for your Shopify store. And now, your host and e-commerce entrepreneur, Steve Hutt.
Hey there, it's Steve, and welcome back to the E-Commerce Fastlane podcast. If this is your first time listening, this is an e-commerce show where we have honest and transparent conversations about building and thriving online with your store powered by Shopify or Shopify Plus. Now, new episodes are available each week in iTunes and Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, or you can sign up at ecommercefastlane.com and you'll be notified there when new shows are being released. Now, on today's episode, I'm chatting with Brett Bernstein, who is the co-founder of Gatsby, and he's going to talk about the small changes that you can make to your site to kind of increase your conversions and streamline kind of your micro-influencer strategy. And, you know, really it has to do with kind of identifying and working with your actual customers who are being social. So let's jump into the show. Hi, Brett, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So before we kind of get into, I have some great questions for you today, by the way. I'm prepared. But before we get into the show, I thought maybe it'd be great if you could kind of tell me about your entrepreneurial journey so far, I guess, leading up to building the Gatsby platform.
Sure. So my first company I started was not necessarily in tech. It was healthy vending for school districts, but it was the best timing ever because we did it about a year before the Obamas came into office. And if you remember Michelle Obama's initiatives around obesity issues with children, you know, having a healthy vending machine business that focused on schools, we did. It was awesome timing, let's put it that way. So started off my career doing healthy vending for school districts. I was up in the Bay Area at the time. So after we went from that company, I went and worked at a little company called Box, B-O-X, that grew and went public while I was there. And then I started Gatsby.
So yes, you have some tech background, you have some natural health food background, and that's very interesting. And then, so what made you think about getting into the Gatsby platform? Like, was there something along the way that said, hey, I want to make a pivot, or I see kind of a pain in the market?
So what happened was, after 3.5 years at Box and seeing Aaron Levy, who's a great CEO and founder, just crush it, I started to get envious, like, okay, I want my own company again, right? So I made a decision to start my own company, and I took with me a couple principles that I learned from Box. And one of them, or a few of them, were have something that's data rich, have APIs so it's part of a larger ecosystem, and then find a business model that there's a current solution that only services a minority part of the population, and broaden it to a larger audience. So Gatsby started off as a really social media vending concept. I don't think I really went into this too much with you before the podcast, but it started off with a social media vending concept, which was extremely expensive for brands to use at the time. So only large brands like Old Navy and Chase Bank were able to afford this marketing strategy. And what it did was, you put a branded vending machine outside of a new store, let's say Old Navy launch, let's say in their New York area. They put a machine outside. As you walk by it, you would see branding that says, like, tweet for your feet on the machine. And if you tweet about Old Navy, the machine dispensed a free pair of slippers or socks, right?
Oh, wow.
Super cool, right? Everyone goes, oh, wow, whenever I say that.
That's
story.
Awesome, yeah.
So I thought, oh, wow. But it's so expensive. We're talking like $100K a month to put this thing together and run it and manage it. So with my background with healthy vending, I thought I could make this much cheaper if I put a machine into malls and movie theaters and other public areas and have brands come through me in a turnkey system to rent access and then sort of have the same technology in place for them for a week or a month. I actually walked around Santa Monica when I first had the idea for this, and within a couple of weeks, I actually had a contract with a major mall there by the ocean. But before I signed it, I had these flashbacks to limitations of vending businesses. Upfront capital, limited growth, insurance, vandalism, all these things, right? And I thought, wow, all my time at Box, in software, enterprise software, and building scalable platforms, like, what am I doing going back to vending? So I took the concept of this social media vending and applied it to e-commerce, where I recognized that every brand, for the most part, is offering a promotion on the website. Let's say 10% off for an email address. I wanted to improve that system, that whole strategy, and I wanted to do it with data-rich functionality and APIs.
So I know before we started recording, we were I had some topics around this concept called authentic marketing, and unfortunately, I didn't press record before that point. So can you kind of share kind of what you mean by authentic marketing, at least from your perspective?
Yeah. So authentic marketing was sort of what I came up with after I started building the first part of our product. So to go back a second, when I released the very earliest beta version of Gatsby, the purpose of it was to, like I said, build a better promotion for websites. Sleeker, more elegant, less in your face, more of a pleasant experience for the shopper,
Right.
But still highly, convertible and engaging for the brand to get the data. As a result, we made a decision early on to require that the shoppers authenticate or log in to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram in order for them to get the promotion code. This was a unique first, and it was kind of a risk because would shoppers do it? Turns out they did. And as a result, we started showing the brand the number of followers on that platform that their shoppers had. Like we have a dashboard where they can see the email address, the profile photo, and now number of followers. And all of a sudden, our earliest customers were like, holy cow, Brett, that is so cool. Now I know that these 10 people who bought yesterday from our website have over 1,000 followers. I'm going to talk to them about being one of our advocates or our influencers. So that became, what moved us into this next evolution of our product, where we are helping brands identify their social customers for what I now say is the purposes of authentic marketing. So rather than spending a ton of time and money and resources to find people who raise their hand and say, yes, I want to sell my followers for money, and finding people who are making a living off of promoting products that are willing to pay them, we are finding people who are just customers first with their friends and a modest following who just share their love for that brand.
Yeah, I see these conversations are happening quite a bit, the whole micro-influencer kind of conversation, because I think, these kind of paid endorsers or paid influencers that have, large followings, sometimes they're fake, sometimes they don't have the engagement level, where I'm finding that a lot of micro-influencers tend to have a lot more raving fans. And it's interesting that that's kind of what Gatsby is doing, that, hey, in exchange for a visually very compelling offer is given in exchange for a social profile connection. And then that really opens things up to, I guess, make some decisions about kind of how you want to interact now with that person who, whatever the offer is that you've now shared with them. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I can walk you through a little bit, I guess simpler term, but the way it works is if you think about, let's just go back a second to the newsletter pop-up that most brands have today, right? They're using something that says, give us your email address, we'll give you a code of 10% off. Imagine just being able to literally add a field that says, give us your Instagram profile as well, right? But once we get that Instagram profile, we then still send the data to the brand saying, okay, this person's profile is this, and they have this many followers. And then what happens next is rather than having the brand have to go through every single day and look at the follower counts, we have an automatic marketing tool built into Gatsby where the brand can set up a trigger. Let's say it's 1,000 followers. Right. Every night, Gatsby goes through who used their campaign that day. And if the 1,000 follower threshold is met or exceeded, an email is sent the next morning to that new shopper. But it's sent between the shopper and the brand. So the brand wakes up in the morning with an email that is in their inbox, directly introducing them to their social customer. And the text of that email is customizable as well. So for example, we have a lot of brands that will write a template similar to something like, hi, my name is Sally or Aaron or Alex or anything, right? I manage Instagram here at XYZ brand. We love your page. We'd love to work with you on a collaboration. Let me know. And that gets sent. It feels authentic. It is authentic because it's, it's plain text and it's just a way for this brand to interact with the shopper.
And that's all through a very it's hard in a podcast to show it until we actually maybe go to a few websites, and we'll put a few links in the show notes and stuff like that. But it's so interesting that where we can have this small graphic that's set up and stylized to the brand, and clicking it and opens up, and it's visually compelling, and then letting the brand make a decision about what social profiles you'd like to have, or you would like them to sign up for, or just to connect it to the brand, and then whatever the offer is that we're trying to do in exchange for that kind of social connection. And I think it's really, really a unique way of waking up in the morning, the brand, the Shopify store owner waking up in the morning, and an authentic email is now being sent out to a range of people that have taken up, or potentially have taken up on this offer, and based on their social profile, and then start building a relationship one-on-one now. I think it's really, really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, we're seeing good success. So we have brands that range from, Paul Frank and Pop Chips to, vape companies in the UK. And, because of my background with food and beverage, we started off with some food and beverage brands, but we've just expanded into so many verticals. And it's a really easy setup process. It's a lot of fun. And then I'll also mention too, we have X amount of automation engine built into Gatsby, but we also have connections to Zapier. So if you want to send this data, let's say the follower counts and emails, into your MailChimp campaign or Klaviyo campaign or anywhere else that the Zapier world, resides on, you can actually build out long-term campaigns with these customers based on follower size, which is also a first that I can find out there in the world.
Very cool. Yeah, I have lots of. Zapier's a great solution for those that maybe the two apps aren't talking to each other yet, and the idea is that you're able to pass data on between one and another, and then trigger an action, which I think is fantastic. So, what happens after this kind of intro email?
So this is where the authenticity really comes in, right? So you can set the threshold of how many followers they have to have up and down. Let's say you have a ton of traffic and you're just crushing it in business. You might have a higher threshold, so you limit the number of intro emails you get, or vice versa. But it's up to you. So we have many use cases you can use. The primary use case is what I said before, like, let's have a talk about collaboration on social media. That is the number one use case that we see our brands use. At that point, the shopper will reply to the email. You'll have a quick conversation. I have an example on our website of a case study where this food brand in LA, they had literally just 2 emails back and forth with the shopper, and they offered him some free product as a thank you. And he said, "I'd love to share a photo with your product." The next week, the post went live, and he has about 4,000 followers and got about 1,000 likes on that photo. So it cost the company next to nothing. It got a massive engagement of 25%. So that's one use case. Now, on the flip side, we have a gym in San Diego that they want to use Gatsby mostly for conversions. So they have their automatic intros set to 0 followers, meaning that every single person who uses the campaign gets directly introduced to a woman named Kira the next morning who runs membership at the gym. So here she is helping to actually nurture these leads through to come into the gym. So our original use case was influencer marketing, but really it's available for a whole wide array of ways to help with your brand and growth and all those great things.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's nice that it's not really down a certain vertical. So, for those that are listening on the show today, it's like no matter kind of what kind of products or services that you kind of offer, there seems to be an interesting use case for Gatsby. If it's lead generation in this case, with the gym having the follower count being at 0, you're right. Then their inbox is going to be full of kind of these authentic outbound emails that have been sent out to build some introductions. And then for those that are in e-commerce, which is probably the bulk of the listeners on this show, the fact that you can set the threshold limit of kind of what kind of micro influencer you're trying to locate, and then based on that size of micro influencer, building that, having that outbound email is pretty exciting, because I think it's almost like how you wake up in the morning and you have your own kind of rituals, kind of what you do. I can see people now that are using Gatsby that instead of grabbing their phone to kind of check their email, they're probably logging into their Gatsby account to see the outbound emails and or responses that have come back because of it.
Well, actually, they don't have to even check Gatsby. It's all in their inbox. That's the best part, is you don't have to. Once you set Gatsby up, you could never look at it again if you don't want to. You could just look at your email and get those intros and do that. You can set up a trigger to send all the emails you receive from Gatsby into your MailChimp, and you can stay in your inbox and just receive those intro emails the next morning indefinitely. It's a 15-minute setup process, and then you can decide how much you want to be constantly changing it, but it's all automatic.
Very cool solution. And I am nearing the end of the show today, but do you have any closing comments that you'd like to kind of leave with the listeners?
Yeah. So actually, it's funny. Speaking of podcasts, I actually listened to a podcast the other day with the CMO of Papa John's, who was formerly the CMO of Wendy's. And when I saw this question come through when I was preparing for this podcast, and I thought about this because if you're looking at, if you want to take away from this podcast something about social media, that's kind of the interest of this conversation. Look at the Twitter feed and the social media presence of Wendy's. This guy who is now at Papa John's, he just is one of the best examples of social media done right. Their team, there's like a number of people on the team who all have the same voice when it comes to being on social media. So they're one cohesive unit, and their voice is just pure authenticity. Like, for example, if you haven't heard of the Wendy's tweets, like just look it up. There are articles written showcasing the top tweets from Wendy's. They're just so good. My favorite one personally is somebody on Twitter mentioned Wendy's and said, "Hey Wendy's, why do you have square meat? Like, why do you have square burgers, right?" And the Wendy's social media handle said, "Because we don't cut corners." Like, how brilliant is that, right? So it's just,
yeah.
you don't have to be humorous. I mean, humor is great, but just being authentic, having fun, like don't take yourself too seriously, and just engage with people in a real way. You can always find ways to automate all these things, but part of what makes Gatsby so special is once the introduction email is sent, it's a real person talking to a real person, being authentic. And that's what that's what we're striving for as a company.
And I guess it's almost like, it's a buzzword, but it's real, is that, this kind of, P2P, person to person, or H to H, one-to-one kind of marketing. I think it's the way of the world now.
Yeah.
So how can people learn about getting this solution for their store or their brand?
Sure. So we are in the App Store on Shopify. So you can just search for Gatsby, or I think even influencer marketing would pop up pretty fast up there as well. But it's just right. Gatsby is Gatsby, as well as our website. So gatsby.ai is our homepage.
Perfect. And then I will, after we're done recording today, I'll set up ecommercefastlane.com/Gatsby, and that'll be in the show notes for this episode. And we'll have that redirect to a special offer that's going to be available for the listeners of the show. And this has been a really educational. It's a very unique, pioneering solution, I believe, in the market. And I think those that are listening to the show, I think you should take what Brett has done over the years leading up to launching this platform, and the brands that are successfully using it. I think you should give it a whirl. I think you should try it out. I think you should experiment with it. I think if you're already doing some kind of exit intent, or as he said, some kind of an offer through email in exchange for a discount, or kind of whatever kind of tactic that you're currently doing, I implore you to at least try this, because it's something new and unique. I will put the video. You produced a really great video too. I believe I found it through the Shopify App Store. So I'm going to publish that inside the show notes too, just to kind of give an overview of the platform too, in video format. So pretty neat. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's been great to talk to you.
All right. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Brett from Gatsby. A few things to think about today. Most brands or Shopify store owners don't know the personas or individuals buying their products online. They also don't know which of those customers are being social. And even if they did know, there hasn't been a mechanism to kind of scalably reach out and activate that influence until now with the Gatsby app. Brett and his team really have built a platform to kind of solve these problems, with the end goal of helping brands and store owners kind of run influencer campaigns with their true customers, which has been defined in this show as kind of authentic marketing. And I couldn't agree more. It really is a great solution, so you should go check it out. Now, if you're enjoying the E-commerce Fastlane podcast, I would be so grateful if you could take 5 minutes and download and subscribe, and then rate and review the show. It's kind of one of the best ways that you can show your appreciation for the continued production of this show. And thanks again for being a supporter and a loyal listener. On the next episode of E-commerce Fastlane, my guest is Nathan Resnick from Sourcify. If you've dabbled with some success in e-commerce with the dropshipping model and are looking to kind of grow and scale a brand, your private label brand, this is an episode that's definitely for you. Well, thanks again for taking time out of your busy day today or your commute and listening to the show. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey with commerce powered by Shopify. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week and take care.